Emperor Belos watched Earth swell in the viewscreen, sneering as the blue-green jewel trembled before his battle fleet. The greedy Barzan ruler craved Earth's wealth and had journeyed across the stars to claim it. Belos transmitted his demands to the primitive humans: submit to Barzan rule and provide tribute or perish. He expected Earth's swift surrender, but as his ships entered orbit and trained weapons on the planet's cities, he received a most unexpected response. Across Earth, cryopods stirred to life in hidden bunkers, ancient gears whirring, lights flickering. Figures emerged from billowing mists of melting ice. Muscles flexed with renewed strength. Eyes flashed open, alight with iron purpose. Earth had unleashed her champions. The Cryo Legion awoke, ready for war. Captain Roger Miller gasped as sensation returned, centuries of cryo sleep sloughing away in seconds. He rolled off the bed, servos whirring in his waking limbs. A voice spoke inside his head, impossibly close, an AI welcoming him to the future. It explained the Barzan threat looming above, that humanity's end drew near. The world had changed in Miller's long slumber. Strange technologies, alien civilizations, wonders and terrors in equal measure. Yet one truth endured from his age to this grim precipice. There would always be those who sought to oppress the weak and crush the very spirit of mankind beneath their heel. It was for this very cause that Miller had trained, had bled, had sacrificed all to defend. Now Earth called upon him again in her darkest hour. The captain stood tall, the full weight of his duty settling once more upon shoulders that had never shrugged from its burden. Around him, the other Cryo Legionnaires rose, each a titan of combat, peerless and undefeated. Together they were humanity's sword and shield, the last hope for a world besieged, one that needed heroes now more than ever. Miller welcomed the challenge, eager to meet the enemy and mete out retribution for their arrogance. Belos would learn the folly of underestimating mankind and reap the whirlwind of picking a fight with legends. Captain Miller and his fellow Cryo-Legionnaires marveled at their new armor and weapons, sleek marvels of engineering that interface seamlessly with the neural implants at the base of their skulls. The captain flexed an armored fist, information scrolling across his retinal display. Range, targeting reticules, ammunition counters, all instantaneously accessible. He grinned fiercely. The Barzans wouldn't know what hit them. As Earth braced for invasion, the revived soldiers threw themselves into integrating with the planet's modern defenders. They sparred in colossal training halls, merciless in honing their skills, tested cutting-edge vehicles and ordnance, debated strategy with the world's finest military minds. At first, Earth's generals viewed the Cryo Legion as archaic, a throwback to a long-gone time. But any doubts swiftly evaporated as the depth of the Legion's experience and raw combat prowess became clear. These were no ordinary soldiers. They were living weapons. Captain Miller soon found himself appointed the Legion's field commander by General Stone, a grizzled veteran who recognized the unparalleled asset the Cryo troopers represented. Miller set to forging the Cryo Legion and Earth forces into a unified fighting machine with singular purpose. But Emperor Belos had no intention of allowing his enemy time to prepare. Barzan fighters streaked from carriers in orbit, blazing toward Earth's shimmering defensive screens. The planet's battleships rose to meet them, torpedo banks erupting, particle lances flashing like captured lightning. The void boiled with ships in fury. Grim news reached Earth's surface. Sentinel Base, linchpin of the planet's early warning network, was under heavy assault. The command center echoed with terse damage reports and mayday calls that cut to static as the line of crimson lights representing Barzan's ships crept ever closer to the blue diamond of Earth on the tactical hollow. Stone turned to Miller, his face like chiseled granite. Sentinel Base must hold. If we lose our eyes and ears, the Barzans will gut us. I'm tasking the Cryo Legion with its defense. Miller gave a sharp nod, already spinning to muster his troops. He assembled a crack team, the finest of the Legion. At its core, his second-in-command Lieutenant Sarah Reese, a wiry woman with flinty eyes and a plasma rifle slung across her back. As the soldiers filed into a silenced transport, its hull absorbing radar, Miller looked to each of their faces in turn. Etched with the same uncompromising commitment, that had defined the Legion for centuries. "The Barzans think to blind Earth by seizing Sentinel Base," Miller said as the ship knifed moonward. "We're going to show them the error of their ways." Pterodon assault landers squatted on the pitted surface of Sentinel Base, disgorging Barzan troopers in chitinous black armor. The outpost's defenders fought with the desperate ferocity of those who knew the price of defeat, but the enemy's numbers seemed inexhaustible. Into this maelstrom strode the Cryo Legion, resplendent in their powered armor, weapons spitting sun-bright death. Miller led the charge, his rifle bucking as it sent armor-piercing slugs through Barzan plate. Reese was a vengeful ghost at his side, her plasma gun scything down the enemy, their dying screams lost in snaps of vaporizing flesh. Yet for all the Legion's valor, the battle hung in the balance, until a new figure emerged from the Barzan lines, towering and terrible. War Commander Crooks, Emperor Belos' so-called Scourge of 1,000 Worlds. His voice boomed across the battlefield, amplified by his armor. "I am Crux. I have slain armies, broken entire civilizations. Face me, champion of Earth, and know the crushing might of the Barzan Empire." Miller stepped forward, rifle raised. "I am Captain Roger Miller. I don't care how many notches are on your belt, Crux. You're just one more invader come to steal what isn't yours. And we're going to send you running back to your master." The war commander threw back his head and laughed, a brutal bark. "Bold words, Earthling. Let us test their truth." He drew a wicked power axe from his hip and charged. Miller lunged to meet Crux's assault, the combatants colliding with a crash of alloy and sinew. The Barzan's strength was monstrous, but Miller had raw fury on his side, eons of righteous wrath. Crux's axe howled through the air, and Miller ducked, feeling the kiss of its power field, as it passed a hair's breadth from his helmet. The captain lashed out with an armored boot, connecting with Crux's knee. The joint crumpled, and the war commander staggered, off balance. Miller didn't hesitate. He brought his rifle around in a vicious arc, slamming it across the Barzan's faceplate. Crux reeled, his helmet fracturing. "First blood to you, Earthling," Crux spat, black ichor leaking from his ruined face. "But I promise it will be the last." Miller's rifle clattered to the ground as he grappled with Crux, their armored forms locked in a brutal embrace. The Barzan's strength was immense, servos whining as he sought to crush the life from the Earth captain. "Your world will fall," Crux snarled, his ruined face inches from Miller's faceplate, "just as countless others have before it." Miller strained against the war commander's grip, muscles burning. He slammed his helmet forward, connecting with Crux's already damaged faceplate. The Barzan stumbled back, momentarily stunned. Seizing the initiative, Miller pressed his attack. His fists became pistons, hammering into Crux's armor. Each impact rang out across the lunar surface, reverberating through the vacuum. But Crux was far from defeated. With inhuman speed, he caught Miller's next punch and twisted. The captain felt white-hot agony lance through his arm as something snapped. Crux's laughter boomed through the comm channel. "Did you truly think you could stand against me? I am the product of 1,000 years of Barzan bioengineering. You are nothing but an obsolete relic." Before Miller could respond, the ground beneath them shuddered. A blinding flash erupted, and the lunar surface fractured. Miller felt himself falling, tumbling into darkness. He slammed into the crater's floor, his armor's systems flickering. Pain lanced through his body. Through swimming vision, he saw Crux descending, power axe raised for a killing blow. A plasma bolt seared past, catching Crux in the shoulder. The Barzan roared in pain and rage. Lieutenant Reese materialized from behind a rocky outcropping, her rifle spitting death. "Sorry I'm late, Captain," she said, helping Miller to his feet. "Had to take care of some business back home." Crux's cybernetics sparked and smoked. He retreated, shouting, "This isn't over, Earthlings! Your world burns even now!" As the Barzan fled, Miller and Reese rallied the surviving Cryo Legion and Earth forces. They drove the invaders from Sentinel Base, securing a critical victory, but as they prepared to return to Earth, grim news awaited. The tactical display aboard their transport painted a horrific picture. Barzan ships swarmed Earth's orbit, raining destruction on major cities. Millions dead in minutes. General Stone's hologram flickered to life, his face etched with exhaustion and grief. The situation is critical. We're outgunned and running out of options, but there might be a way to even the odds. He outlined a daring plan: infiltrate the Barzan flagship and steal weapon schematics. It was a high-stakes endeavor with slim chances of success. Miller exchanged a look with Reese. No words were needed. They would go, and to hell with the odds. As Earth burned below, Miller addressed his strike team. We're about to attempt the impossible. But remember this: every Barzan ship we disable, every weapon we turn against them, brings us one step closer to saving our world. The transport's bay doors opened, revealing the looming bulk of the Barzan flagship. Miller checked his gear one final time. Let's remind these bastards why you don't pick a fight with Earth. With that, they leapt into the void, propulsion packs flaring as they hurtled toward humanity's last, desperate hope. The strike team's stealth shuttle sliced through the chaos of Earth's orbit, a dark sliver among the flashes of weapons fire and burning debris. Miller gripped the safety harness, his eyes locked on the looming bulk of the Barzan flagship. 30 seconds to breach, Reese called from the pilot's seat, her voice tight with concentration. Miller turned to the rest of his team, 5 of the Cryo Legion's finest. Remember, we're here for the weapon schematics. In and out fast, no heroics. The shuttle shuddered as it punched through the flagship's defensive screen. Reese's piloting was flawless, threading them through a hail of point defense fire. With a bone-jarring impact, magnetic grapples latched onto the flagship's hull. Cutting team, go! 2 Legionnaires sprang into action, plasma torches flaring to life. The hull glowed white-hot, then gave way with a silent rush of escaping atmosphere. Miller was first through the breach, rifle up and scanning. Alarms blared the moment they entered. Miller's HUD lit up with hostile signatures converging on their position. So much for stealth, Reese muttered, taking up a defensive position. The corridors of the Barzan flagship were a maze of alien geometry, all sweeping curves and biomechanical protrusions. The team moved with practiced efficiency, years of training allowing them to communicate with little more than gestures and quick hand signals. They encountered the first wave of Barzan security at a junction. Miller's rifle barked, downing 2 before they could raise their weapons. Reese's plasma bolts seared through the air, leaving charred holes in Barzan armor. Push forward, Miller ordered, not slowing his advance. They fought their way deeper into the ship, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. Miller's mind raced, comparing the layout to the intel they'd received from Admiral Varan. Something felt off, but he couldn't pin it down. A massive blast door blocked their path to the central computer core. As Reese set to work bypassing its security, Miller's comm crackled to life. Captain, this is Hawkeye. We've got multiple bogies inbound, big ones. Miller's blood ran cold as he saw them round the corner. Ravager Guard, easily twice the size of a normal Barzan, their armor dripping with weapons. Reese, how long? 2 minutes, maybe less. Make it faster. The rest of you, with me. The corridor erupted in a storm of weapons fire. Miller ducked behind a support strut, feeling the heat of near misses. He leaned out, squeezing off controlled bursts. One Ravager went down, then another, but there seemed to be no end to them. A deafening explosion rocked the ship. For a moment, Miller thought they'd been hit. Then he saw the gaping hole in the far bulkhead, Barzan bodies scattered like broken dolls. You're welcome, Reese's voice came over the comm, a hint of smugness in her tone. She'd called in an airstrike right through the flagship's hull. Doors open, Captain. They sprinted for the computer core, the sounds of pursuing Ravagers growing fainter. The cavernous chamber was a forest of data crystals and pulsing energy conduits. Miller's team fanned out, covering all angles as Reese interfaced with a central terminal. I'm in, she reported after a tense minute. Downloading weapon schematics now. Miller allowed himself a moment of hope. They might actually pull this off. Then the air shimmered, and everything went wrong. An invisible force slammed into Miller, driving the breath from his lungs. He watched in horror as his team was lifted off their feet, suspended in shimmering anti-gravity fields. Only his position behind a data crystal had saved him from the same fate. A figure stepped into view, flanked by cyborg troopers, tall and lithe with silver skin that seemed to ripple like mercury. Her eyes glowed with cold intelligence. "Captain Miller, I presume?" Her voice was silky, almost amused. "I am Science Director Zalara. Welcome aboard." Miller raised his rifle, but a gesture from Zalara sent it flying from his hands. Now, there's no need for that." She smiled, all teeth and no warmth. "You've played your part admirably. It's time you understood the true scope of what's happening here." As Zalara spoke, the horrifying reality of their situation began to sink in. They hadn't infiltrated the flagship. They'd walked right into a trap of her design. "Your precious Admiral Varan," Zalara continued, "a pawn in my game, the intel he provided, carefully crafted to lead you here to me." Miller's mind raced, piecing together the implications. "The data we stole?" Zalara's laugh was like breaking glass. "Breadcrumbs, Captain. You've been chasing shadows while delivering exactly what I needed." Her eyes gleamed with triumph. "With the information you've so helpfully provided, Project Prometheus will be unstoppable." Before Miller could respond, a stasis field enveloped him. As consciousness faded, his last thought was of Earth, and the terrible power they had unwittingly handed to its greatest enemy. Miller's consciousness flickered back to life, his neural implants buzzing with static. He found himself strapped to a metal examination table, surrounded by pulsing Barzan tech. Zalara loomed over him, her mercury-like skin reflecting the harsh laboratory lights. "Welcome back, Captain," she purred. "I hope you're comfortable. You're about to make history." Miller struggled against his restraints, but they held fast. He saw his team similarly bound nearby, their faces contorted in pain. "What are you doing to them?" he growled. Zalara's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Merely harvesting data. Your Cryo Legion's neural patterns are the key to unlocking Earth's defenses." She tapped a glowing console, and a holographic display sprang to life, showing schematics of a massive weapon. "Behold Project Prometheus, the culmination of Barzan engineering." Before Miller could respond, Zalara activated a device on her wrist. A wave of agony crashed through his skull as his neural implants shorted out. Every enhanced nerve ending screamed in protest. He bit back a cry, tasting blood. "Fascinating," Zalara murmured, studying readouts on a nearby screen. "Your resilience is impressive, Captain, but ultimately futile." Through swimming vision, Miller watched as Zalara moved between the captive legionnaires, adjusting equipment and harvesting data. With each interaction, the schematics of Prometheus grew more detailed, more complete. "Why?" Miller managed to gasp between waves of pain. "Why go to all this trouble?" Zalara paused, considering him. "Because, Captain, conquest through brute force is inefficient. Prometheus will allow us to neutralize entire civilizations without firing a shot." She gestured to a viewport where Earth hung like a blue jewel. "Your world will be the first demonstration." Alarms blared suddenly, and Zalara's eyes widened in surprise. "It seems your General Stone is more resourceful than anticipated. No matter. It's time to conclude our experiment." She strode to a central control panel, fingers dancing across its surface. A low hum built throughout the chamber as Prometheus powered up. Miller strained against his bonds, desperation lending him strength. But it wasn't enough. "Prometheus online," a synthetic voice announced. "Target acquired." Zalara's eyes gleamed with triumph. "Fire!" A blinding pulse of energy erupted from the flagship, engulfing Earth in a crackling web of electromagnetic force. Miller watched in horror as the planet's lights winked out, entire continents plunging into darkness. The Earth fleet, moments ago pressing their attack, now drifted lifelessly. "A masterpiece," Zalara breathed, drinking in the sight of Earth's fall. She turned to Miller, her expression one of cold satisfaction. "Your world's defiance ends here, Captain. But take heart, you've ushered in a new era of galactic peace. Under Barzan rule, of course." As Zalara issued orders for ground forces to begin their invasion, Miller's mind raced. The pain from his fried implants was excruciating, but he forced himself to focus. There had to be a way to stop this, to shut down Prometheus before its power spread across the stars. He glanced at his fellow captives, seeing the same grit in their eyes. The fight wasn't over, not while a single member of the Cryo Legion still drew breath. Earth was down but not out. A whisper of movement caught Miller's attention. Lieutenant Sarah Reese had managed to work one hand free from her restraints. Her eyes locked with his, conveying a silent message. Miller gave an almost imperceptible nod. In a blur of motion, Reese broke free. She slammed her elbow into the nearest guard's throat, snatching his weapon as he fell. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air as she dove for cover. "Stop her!" Zalera shrieked. But Reese was already gone, disappearing into the labyrinthine corridors of the flagship. Alarms blared as Barzan troops poured into the lab. Miller strained against his bonds, watching helplessly as Zalara barked orders into her comm unit. "Find that human and bring her to me, alive." Minutes stretched into hours. Miller's muscles screamed from the constant tension, but he refused to relax. His team remained stoic, enduring whatever torments Zalara's scientists inflicted upon them. Suddenly, the lab's main display flickered to life. Zalara's eyes widened as she absorbed the incoming data. "Impossible," she breathed. The screen filled with reports of attacks on Barzan outposts across a dozen worlds. Supply depots exploded. Communication relays went dark. It was uncoordinated chaos, but the message was clear. Resistance had ignited across the Empire. A triumphant grin spread across Miller's face as he recognized Reese's handiwork. She had found a way to rally the oppressed. Zalara's carefully constructed house of cards was about to come crashing down. The science director's composure cracked. She lashed out, striking Miller across the face. "What have you done?" she hissed. Before he could respond, the ship rocked with a massive explosion. Emergency klaxons wailed. Zalara's comm unit crackled to life with panicked reports of Cryo Legion escapees seizing key systems throughout the vessel. In the chaos, Miller felt his restraints loosen. He didn't hesitate. With a roar of effort, he tore free, tackling the nearest guard and claiming his weapon. The rest of his team followed suit, turning the lab into a close-quarters battleground. Miller fought his way to the central console, input flying across the screen as he hijacked the ship's AI. "Transmitting override protocols now," he announced, voice hoarse but determined. "Prometheus is finished." Zalara lunged for him, but a plasma bolt from Reese, materializing in the doorway like an avenging angel, sent the Barzan scientist sprawling. "Nice of you to join us, Lieutenant," Miller quipped, securing the last of the enemy forces. Reese allowed herself a small smile. "Couldn't let you have all the fun, sir." As the flagship's systems came under their control, Miller opened a channel to all resistance forces. His voice rang out across the stars, a rallying cry for freedom. "To all those who have suffered under Barzan oppression, the time to act is now. Earth stands with you. Together, we will forge a future free from tyranny." The response was immediate. Across the galaxy, the flames of rebellion burned brighter than ever before. The stars blurred as Miller's ship dropped out of hyperspace above Navarra, a once-forgotten colony world now transformed into the crucible of galactic rebellion. Dozens of vessels from disparate worlds filled the orbital lanes, a patchwork fleet united by a common cause. "Docking sequence initiated, Admiral," Lieutenant Reese reported from her station. The title still felt strange to Miller, a weight he wasn't sure he deserved. As they descended through Novara's atmosphere, Miller watched the sprawling fortifications below take shape. Hastily constructed defense towers bristled with weaponry. Makeshift barricades turned city streets into kill zones. This would be their Alamo, their line in the sand against Barzan tyranny. The newly christened Ceresian Accords War Council convened in a repurposed ore processing facility. Representatives from a dozen liberated worlds crowded around holographic displays, their faces etched with tenacity and fear in equal measure. "Our latest intelligence suggests War Commander Crux has mobilized a significant strike force," Miller addressed the assembly. "Their trajectory puts them on an intercept course within the week." A murmur of concern rippled through the gathering. Miller raised a hand for silence. "I know many of you have doubts, but look around this room. We have accomplished the impossible, uniting worlds that were once bitter enemies. If we stand together, we can weather this storm." As the council debated strategy, klaxons shattered the tense atmosphere. Miller's comm unit crackled to life with Lieutenant Reese's urgent voice. "Barzan Vanguard detected on long-range scanners. They're moving fast, sir." "Crux," Miller growled. "He's forced our hand. All units, battle stations." The colony erupted into frenzied activity. Civilians scrambled for shelters as militia and professional soldiers manned their posts. Miller strode through the chaos, issuing rapid-fire orders to transform Novara into an impregnable fortress. The sky ignited as Barzan dropships pierced the atmosphere. Miller watched from a command bunker as the first wave of enemy troops hit their outermost defenses. Plasma fire lit up the night, illuminating the desperate struggle. "Hold the line!" Miller's voice rang out over the comms. "Every second we buy is another ally joining our cause." Days bled into weeks as the siege ground on. Miller's brilliance turned the tide time and again, repurposing mining equipment into formidable weapons, using the colony's vast tunnel networks to outmaneuver Crux's forces. But the Barzan commander was relentless, hurling wave after wave of troops against their defenses. Lieutenant Reese led daring raids behind enemy lines, disrupting supply chains and sowing chaos. Miller marveled at her growth from a skilled subordinate into a true leader of the resistance. The decisive moment came as Miller received word of a breakthrough. A battered freighter limped into Novaran space, carrying precious cargo. Supreme Chancellor Various herself, smuggled off her homeworld at great cost. Miller met the exiled leader in a secure bunker. Various eyes burned with a fire that belied her haggard appearance. "Admiral Miller," she addressed him formally, "I bring grave news. Emperor Belos is a usurper. He orchestrated a coup, murdering my predecessor and seizing power for himself." The revelation sent shockwaves through the resistance. With Varius's legitimacy, the Ceresian Accord was no longer just a rebellion. It was the rightful government of the galaxy. Energized by this development, Miller devised a bold counteroffensive. As Crux's forces prepared another assault, Miller led a joint strike team to breach the Barzan lines. Plasma bolts seared the air around them as they fought their way through to the enemy command center. There, in the heart of the maelstrom, Miller found himself face-to-face with War Commander Crux. The Barzan's cybernetic enhancements glowed with murderous intent. "You've led these fools to their doom, human," Crux snarled, his arm cannon powering up. Miller's own weapon snapped up. "No, Crux, I've shown them the path to freedom." Their duel was savage, a blur of blades and energy weapons. Miller's enhanced reflexes were pushed to their limit as he sought a weakness in Crux's defenses. Then he saw it, a flaw in the cyborg's power distribution node. With a precisely aimed shot, Miller breached Crux's armor. The Barzan commander fell, his systems overloading in a cascade of sparks. As news of Crux's defeat spread, the Barzan offensive crumbled. Cheers erupted across Novara as the last enemy ships fled the system. In the wake of their victory, Chancellor Varius formally established the Ceresian Accord. Miller found himself thrust into an even greater role, Fleet Admiral of the new government's combined forces. "The real war has only just begun," Varius addressed the assembled leaders. "We must take the fight to Emperor Belos himself." Miller's mind raced with possibilities as he studied star charts of Barzan space. Their path led to the heart of enemy territory and a confrontation with Belos's world-killing dreadnought. "Plot a course for the Barzan throne world," Miller ordered, his voice steady with grit. "It's time to end this." The Ceresian Accord fleet materialized from hyperspace, a vast armada of mismatched ships united in purpose. At its heart, Miller's flagship, the Defiance, bristled with newly retrofitted weapons. The Admiral's eyes narrowed as he took in the looming silhouette of Zarhaven, Emperor Belos's fortified throne world. "All ships, battle formation Omega," Miller's voice rang out across the comm channels. "Lieutenant Reese, prepare your infiltration team." Sarah Reese nodded grimly, her commando unit already assembled in the launch bay. As she boarded the stealth shuttle, Miller's voice crackled through her earpiece. Remember, your primary objective is the planetary defense grid. We'll create a diversion, but speed is critical. Understood, sir, Reese replied, her fingers tightening on her plasma rifle. We won't let you down. The moment Reese's shuttle cleared the hangar, all hell broke loose. Imperial warships swarmed from Zarhaven's orbital platforms, filling space with searing energy beams and swarms of fighter craft. Miller's voice cut through the chaos, coordinating the Ceresian counterattack with surgical precision. On the bridge of the Defiance, Miller found himself locked in a deadly dance with Belos's own royal dreadnought. The two titans exchanged devastating barrages, shields flaring under the assault. Concentrate fire on their starboard weapons array, Miller ordered, gripping the command console as another impact rocked the ship. We need to punch through. Meanwhile, Reese's shuttle slipped past the raging space battle, hugging the curvature of Zarhaven's atmosphere. They touched down in a maintenance sector near the planetary defense grid's primary nexus. Reese signaled her team, and they moved out with practiced efficiency. The corridors of the control center echoed with the staccato of plasma fire as Reese's commandos engaged the Barzan elite guards. She ducked under a volley of energy bolts, returning fire with deadly accuracy. Jensen, Kowalski, left flank, Reese barked. Chen, cover me! They fought their way to the central control room, leaving a trail of disabled Barzan troops in their wake. Reese's fingers flew across the alien console, uploading the logic malworms that would cripple Zarhaven's shields. Upload complete, she reported, her voice tight with urgency. Admiral, you've got your window. Miller wasted no time. All ships, this is Admiral Miller. Commence Operation Spearhead. The Ceresian fleet unleashed a devastating orbital barrage, their combined firepower focusing on a single point in Zarhaven's flickering defenses. The Imperial Palace's shipyards erupted in a chain of explosions, Project Worldrazor's incomplete superstructure crumbling under the assault. Deep within the palace, Emperor Belos watched the destruction with awe-inspiring fury. He rounded on Science Director Zelara, his cybernetic implants pulsing with rage. Activate Worldrazor, he snarled. Now! Zelara's eyes widened. But your Imperial Majesty, the dark matter cores are highly unstable. Without proper containment... I don't care, Belos roared. If we fall, the entire sector burns with us. As Zelara rushed to comply, Miller's ground forces breached Zarhaven's perimeter. Dropships disgorged waves of Cryo legionnaires onto the planet's surface, led by the legendary Captain Cruz and the indomitable Corporal Kenders. The streets of the Imperial capital became a war zone. Cruz's enhanced reflexes were pushed to their limits as he engaged a towering Ravager super soldier. The genetically engineered monstrosity shrugged off plasma bolts like raindrops, its claws leaving deep gouges in Duracrete walls. Kenders! Cruz shouted over the din of battle. Concentrated fire on its primary nerve cluster. The corporal responded instantly, his heavy repeater unleashing a torrent of energy that finally brought the beast down. But for every Ravager they felled, more poured from their cryo chambers, a tide of unstoppable flesh and fury. Above the planet, cracks began to appear in the fabric of reality itself. Dark rifts yawned open, disgorging tendrils of extra-dimensional energy that lashed out indiscriminately. Miller's tactical display lit up with warnings as entire squadrons were swallowed by the expanding anomalies. Sir, his XO reported, face ashen. We're detecting massive transdimensional instabilities. If this continues... Miller's teeth clenched. Worldrazor. Belos must have activated it prematurely. He keyed the fleet-wide comm. All units converge on the Palace reactor complex. We have to shut it down before it tears the sector apart. The Admiral's gaze swept over the holographic representation of the battle, his mind racing through possibilities. The fate of not just Zarhaven, but countless worlds across the galaxy now hung in the balance. And somewhere in that maelstrom of steel and fire, Belos waited. Miller's fingers tightened on the arms of his command chair. Helm, set course for the heart of that storm. It's time to end this. The Defiance plunged into the swirling chaos of Zarhaven's upper atmosphere, leading the charge towards what could be the Ceresian Accord's finest hour, or its last stand. The Defiance shuddered as another volley of energy beams slammed into its shields. Miller gripped the command console, his eyes fixed on the swirling vortex of dark energy erupting from Zarhaven's surface. "Status report," he barked. "Shields at 37%, Admiral," his XO replied, voice tight. "World Razor's output is increasing exponentially. We're detecting widespread chronospatial anomalies across the sector." Miller's eyes hardened. "All ships, focus fire on the Imperial Palace's outer defenses. We need to punch through now." As the Ceresian fleet unleashed a devastating barrage, Miller's comm crackled to life. Corporal Kenders's voice cut through the din of battle. "Sir, we've breached the palace perimeter," Kenders reported, the sound of plasma fire echoing in the background. "Encountering heavy resistance from elite guards, pushing towards the central nexus." "Copy that, Corporal. Keep up the pressure." Miller's attention snapped to a new alert. Lieutenant Reese's stealth team had infiltrated Zarhaven's power distribution hub. "Admiral," Reese's voice was barely above a whisper, "we're initiating sabotage protocols. Local grids should start failing within minutes." "Excellent work, Lieutenant. Stand by for further orders." The battle raged on multiple fronts. Captain Cruz's voice joined the chorus of reports flooding Miller's command center. "Admiral, we've identified a weakness in the Ravager defensive line," Cruz shouted over the sounds of combat. "Request permission to launch flanking maneuver." "Granted, Captain. Hit them hard and fast." Miller watched as Cruz's battalion executed a brilliant feint, drawing the Ravagers away from a critical plasma conduit. In a matter of moments, they severed the reactor's primary coolant flow. The effect was immediate. Alarms blared across the Defiance as sensors registered a massive surge in World Razor's energy signature. "Sir," his science officer's face had gone pale. "The reactor's dark matter core is destabilizing. If it goes critical..." A deafening roar cut through all comm channels. Emperor Belos's voice boomed across the battlefield, distorted by rage and static. "You dare challenge the might of the Barzan Empire?" the tyrant snarled. "If I fall, I'll drag this entire sector into oblivion." Miller's tactical display erupted with warnings. The fractures in space-time were widening, threatening to tear reality itself apart. "All ships, converge on the reactor complex," Miller ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos. "We end this now." The Defiance plunged through Zarhaven's atmosphere, leading the charge towards the pulsing heart of World Razor. Enemy fire intensified as they neared their target, but Miller's deft maneuvering kept them one step ahead. They burst through a wall of defensive fire, the Defiance's hull groaning under the strain. As they approached the central nexus, Miller caught sight of a massive figure through the view screen. Emperor Belos himself, cybernetic enhancements glowing with malevolent energy. "Prepare for atmospheric entry," Miller commanded. "I'm going in." The Admiral strode towards the airlock, his mind focused on the confrontation to come. As he stepped onto Zarhaven's ravaged surface, the full magnitude of World Razor's power became apparent. Reality itself seemed to warp and twist around him. Belos stood at the center of the maelstrom, his augmented form pulsing with stolen energy. The tyrant's eyes locked onto Miller, a sneer twisting his features. "Come to die, Admiral," Belos taunted, raising an arm crackling with energy. Miller's own weapon snapped up. "No, Your Majesty. I've come to end your reign." The two titans clashed amidst the swirling chaos of the reactor core. Belos's cybernetic enhancements gave him inhuman strength and speed, but Miller's enhanced reflexes kept him one step ahead. Energy bolts and plasma blades carved furrows in the unstable ground beneath their feet. For a heart-stopping moment, Belos gained the upper hand. His augmented fist closed around Miller's throat, cybernetic strength threatening to crush the life from him. But as the Emperor gloated, Miller saw his opportunity. With the last of his strength, he activated the neural disruptor hidden in his gauntlet. The fractal-rendered backdoor in Belos's neural code, painstakingly implanted by Ceresian infiltrators, flared to life. The tyrant's synaptic overrides glitched, his grip faltering just long enough for Miller to break free. In that crucial instant, Miller struck. His plasma blade found a gap in Belos's defenses, carving through augmented flesh and circuitry. The Emperor stumbled back, his systems sparking and failing. But even as Belos fell, a new threat emerged. Science Director Zalara lunged for WorldRaiser's control panel, her fingers flying across the interface. "For the Empire!" she screamed, initiating the detonation sequence. Alarms blared as matter and antimatter began to annihilate each other within WorldRaiser's unstable core. Miller's mind raced, searching for a solution as reality itself began to unravel around them. Miller's plasma blade crackled with energy as he struck Zalara's hand away from the control panel. The Science Director crumpled to the ground, clutching her seared wrist. Alarms still blared, but the detonation sequence aborted, its countdown frozen on the flickering holographic display. "It's over," Miller growled, his voice barely audible over the dying whine of WorldRaiser's destabilizing core. As the dust settled over Zarhaven's war-torn surface, Miller found himself overseeing the aftermath of their hard-won victory. The liberated worlds erupted in celebration, casting off the chains of Barzan tyranny. Chancellor Varias's holographic image flickered to life on the Defiance's bridge, her expression a mixture of relief and grit. "Admiral Miller, the Galactic Council is reconvening. We're initiating immediate demilitarization and recovery efforts across affected systems." Miller nodded, but his eyes were drawn to the scarred ruins of Belos's palace below. "Understood, Chancellor. My teams are securing the complex now. We'll provide a full report once—" His words died in his throat as Lieutenant Reese's urgent transmission cut through the comm channel. "Admiral, you need to see this. We found something disturbing in the lower levels." Minutes later, Miller stood in the sterile confines of Zalara's hidden laboratory, his face a mask of impossibly strong revulsion. Rows of stasis pods lined the walls, each containing a familiar face, his own, Cruz's, even perfect replicas of Reese and Kender's. "Clones," Reese whispered, her voice tight with shock. "Sir, they've cloned us." Miller's gaze fell on a nearby console, its screen still active. His fingers flew across the interface, decrypting files with practiced ease. As the data streamed before his eyes, the full scope of Zalara's depravity became clear. "Not just clones," he muttered. "Weapons. They've stripped away everything but our combat skills, our tactical knowledge. These things are nothing but flesh and fury." The captive Zalara's laughter echoed through the chamber as she was dragged in by Ceresian guards. "Magnificent, aren't they? The pinnacle of Project Vengeance. Your own legacies, turned against you and everything you hold dear." Miller's hand tightened on his weapon, but he kept his voice steady. "Why? What could you possibly hope to gain from this abomination?" Zalara's eyes gleamed with fanatical pride. "Insurance, Admiral. A failsafe to ensure that even if you prevailed today, the Barzan Empire would rise again. Your own strength, your own tactics, purged of weakness, of conscience. The perfect soldiers to crush any future resistance." The implications hit Miller like a physical blow. Everything they had fought for, every sacrifice made in the name of freedom, twisted into a tool of oppression. He looked at the serene faces of the clones, seeing not just copies of himself and his comrades, but a perversion of their very souls. "Purge them," he ordered, his voice hoarse. "All of them, and destroy every scrap of data related to this project." Reese stepped forward, her face pale. "Sir, are you sure? This decision—" "Is mine alone," Miller cut her off. "I'll bear the weight of it, no one else." As his team moved to carry out his orders, Miller turned to Zalara. The Science Director's smug expression faltered as she saw the cold fury in his eyes. "Your empire is finished," he said softly, "and so are you." With a nod to the guards, Zalara was led away to face justice for her crimes against life itself. Miller watched as the stasis pods were deactivated one by one, their occupants never knowing the twisted purpose for which they were created. Later, on the bridge of the Defiance, Miller gazed out at the stars. The vastness of space seemed to mirror the hollow feeling in his chest. Reese approached, her footsteps hesitant. "Sir, the last of the clone data has been purged. What are your orders?" Miller turned to face her, his eyes heavy with the weight of centuries. "Our work here is done, Lieutenant. It's time we return to Earth. Reese's brow furrowed. But sir, the rebuilding efforts, the new Galactic Order... We'll have to proceed without us, Miller finished. Our legend ends here, Reese. We've done our part. Perhaps more than we should have. He looked around at his assembled commanders, each face etched with confusion and concern. We return to cryo sleep, a living memorial to an age of heroes, yes, but also a safeguard against our legacy being twisted again. As the implications of his words sank in, Miller squared his shoulders. Prepare the defiance for the journey home. It's time we faded into the history we were reborn to protect.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.